everyone, this is Sharon Lorainne Boon, founder and creator of Passage to Yourself, and we have a very special guest with us for a very unique interview. Her name is Stacy York, and Stacy is a mother, wife, licensed clinical social worker. She's recently started a campaign called Be What's Right as a mission for parents to role model for their children how to overcome emotional difficulties and deal with life in a positive manner. Stacy has worked with hundreds of families as mental health therapist, has helped her gain the skills to educate, encourage, and support parents and caregivers. Welcome, Stacy.
Well, thank you, Sharon. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm excited to be on your call and be interviewed, and excited to have all the listeners out there today. So thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming. Now, we're going to be talking about the importance of staying emotionally balanced and working through past memories and feelings. Now, this is a topic that's near and dear to me because that's one of the things I teach is about removing blocks, removing like all these stuff that we've carried around with us for many years, and so we can create a better life for ourselves. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's definitely a topic near and dear to me, Sharon, so thanks for having me on here. I always say that when I work primarily with children and families, and so my passion comes from the work that I do with kids, because most of the time kids come through my door and parents have brought them because they're like, what do I do with these strong emotions? Kids are having temper tantrums, they're having behavior problems, they're acting out, all this stuff. And so over time, what I've learned is that my job is really to help parents deal with what's going on with their kids. And so I've just sat back and done a lot of observing. And what I've noticed is, as a child, it's really a lot easier to learn how to walk than it is to learn how to share emotion. Because when we learn how to walk, when we observe everyone around us, they're all walking similarly. They're walking one foot in front of the other. Yet when we learn about emotion, everybody expresses emotion differently. There's nobody who is consistent. And so when a child is learning to walk, they can observe and people look similar. But then when they're learning how to have anger or sadness or happiness, everybody is so different. And so part of what we've talked about, or what you mentioned, is that sometimes we carry around a lot of emotional baggage with us, and that can block us from teaching our children how to have healthy emotions, because all emotions are healthy. It's just what we do with them that gets unhealthy. So that's kind of my mission, is really to help parents get out of their own way and feel their feelings in a way that's healthy so that they can teach their children how to feel those, because it's pretty inconsistent. We don't have a lot of consistency on emotions.
Yes, definitely. I can attest to that. Now, what are the main emotions that is really stopping or causing the most problems? Like, I know anger is definitely one. Frustration has got to be another one. But there's also, like, hurt, and, like, how do you deal with all that, especially with children?
Absolutely. Well, there's some major emotions that I think there are not a lot of words for. Grieving is a huge, huge one. Anytime we have a loss in our family or a loss in our life, it's very hard to explain. It's very hard to put words to that strong emotion. And so grief sadness, fear is a huge one. And fear is not something we really recognize per se. We don't walk around and say, gosh, I'm really scared that fill in the blank, or I'm really scared, I'm really scared that I'm going to go to school today and I'm not going to see my mom after school. Or I'm really scared that my son's going to go to school today and something bad's going to happen. Fear can just stop us right in our tracks. And, I think there's a level of fear that occurs when you become a parent, because now we're afraid for our children out in the big world. And some of it's realistic and some of it isn't realistic. So, it's hard to put words to emotion. The other thing that I say and I teach about is that our primary emotions, our initial emotions when we're real little are sad, mad, glad, and scared. And most of us can identify sad, mad, glad, and scared. But then I think we reach an age, probably around 5 or 6 years old, when we become more verbal, and that shift in emotion starts to change into things like worry, confusion, disappointment. And those words are such big words that we can't often it's hard to describe them. And then we go on into our adulthood and we still are operating from sad, mad, glad, scared, when really we might feel confused, disappointed, worried, but we never had those words to put with our emotion. Helpful?
Helpful, yes. Now, how do you deal with these emotions with kids, especially with younger children who really don't know how to express properly? Like I know when, as adults, when we get to that adult stage, they form as sort of like barriers and blocks and stuff like that, and we have to deal with that in order to create the life that we want. And when you go back and you work through all that stuff as an adult, and you find all these emotions that you associate as something that you felt when you were a child, and it doesn't make logical sense, but we still deal with that. Now,
right.
How is there a method, or is there a way, like right now, that we could stop those emotions from causing like future blocks, if you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So above all, I think my number one rule: feel your feeling when you're feeling it.
Yes.
No matter what age. And that is a really hard thing to do. And so I have 2 little people in my life, 2 kids, and they've taught me a ton of stuff. And we've gone through the terrible 2s and the terrible 3s. And, really, I call it the terrific 2s, because if they're expressing emotion and they're having temper tantrums, that's awesome, because that's age appropriate. And what that means is they're trying to find the words to match the physical part of their body. And so as an adult, when we work with kids, what we want to do is identify the thought and the feeling and the physical piece of what's happening. So I have, lots of experiences where people in my life have said, "My goodness, Stacy, you sure let your kids yell at you a lot." And I kind of chuckle at that, because that, first of all, that's a blueprint. Kids should not yell at their parents. That is all about how we grew up in the olden days. Kids are to be seen and not heard. You don't cry if you're, toughen up, those kind of things. So that's a blueprint. So when our kids are yelling at us, there's a difference between yelling and being disrespectful and yelling and having an emotion. And so I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with them yelling, "I'm so mad." I would rather hear "I'm so mad" than have them throw something or bite somebody or kick somebody. And what happens if they can learn now, when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, how to get the words out, even if they're blowing it on the delivery, at least the words are coming out of them. And then what we do is let them kind of have the emotion, because they're having an emotional crisis. We're the crisis responder. We respond to that crisis, and then once the crisis is over, we go back and say, "Okay, now how can we do that differently? What were the words you could have used? Did you really have to yell that? How can you help me understand what's going on a little bit better?" And unfortunately, most of us don't get past that part. We don't come back to the debriefing. I always ask parents and caregivers, I always say, "Have you ever been in a car accident?" And most people say yes. A lot of people have been in a car accident. Well, when the police officer responded to that car accident, did they come up to the window and yell, "What the hell are you thinking? Why are you doing that?" Of course not, right?
Yeah.
Of course they didn't. Because you're in a crisis. When you've been in a car accident, you do not need to be yelled at. So when we as parents and caregivers are yelling at our children when they are having a crisis, that's a problem.
Yes.
That's like, do you see what I'm saying? And so
Absolutely.
What we want to do, their emotional crisis is their crisis. So we want to help them get through that in the most calm way. Just because my son has to pick up his toys and can't play and throws a big, huge temper tantrum fit, doesn't mean I have to throw a big, huge temper tantrum fit either. Because then what I'm teaching him is when I throw a fit, when he throws a fit, first of all, codependency is starting to develop. And then what I am teaching him is that, you know what, I can't control my emotions, so how in the world am I going to be able to help you control your emotions?
Yes. Absolutely.
Make sense?
Makes sense. It actually reminds me of a situation that happened fairly recently, a few months back. I was on a transit bus in the city of Toronto, headed downtown, and the bus I was on struck an 11-year-old girl. And she's fine, but the whole situation, because I was the only one on the bus who knew first aid, that I got off immediately. The bus driver was an emotional wreck. The child was screaming on the road, and it was a fairly busy street. There was probably about 8 lanes of traffic, and she was about to jaywalk, so she just stepped off when the bus struck her. And across the road was the sister, and so she came across 8 lanes of traffic, almost getting struck herself to get to her sister, instead of walking just further down where the lights were. And when she came there, I didn't know who was who, and the girl that was struck was crying, she was screaming, she was upset, she was in pain, and made sure that she was stable enough. And when I found out, okay, what's going on, the sister was really upset, shaking like uncontrollably. Got the situation under control. I said to her, you need to contact your parents. She did that immediately. They lived fairly close by. The mother came around the corner, saw what was going on, stopped immediately and went, oh my God. And it turned out much later on, after the ambulance and whatnot had arrived, that the mother was a registered nurse, but she wasn't in the mind frame or mindset to look after her daughter properly. In fact, it made the daughter scream more because she knew her mother was so upset.
Absolutely.
So I pulled the mother aside. Like, I didn't quite leave the child because I was the only one knowing first aid, and I didn't want to leave that scene. And I said to the mother, I said, you got to keep it under control for her.
Right.
You have, because it's making it worse. You have to be strong for her at this moment. She needs your strength. And
absolutely.
It actually worked out fairly well. She got herself calm, and then she started to think logically. Okay, I'm going to need my purse. I'm going to need a phone. I'm going to need her health cards. I'm going to need all this information. So just by doing that one action to calm the mom down, it actually organized everything perfectly. She was able to get someone to go get her purse for her, get a phone for her, everything that she needs, so she can take her daughter down to the hospital. Now, the daughter, the girl that was struck, she's fine. She's recovered quite nicely, from what I've been told. And but this reminds me, when you said about the car accident, how the police will come and say, oh, what were you thinking? Well, yeah, that's what happened, except it was the mom saying this to her 11-year-old girl who was on the road, already screaming and upset, and it made the situation worse. But because I was sort of like the sane person in that situation, I was able to get the whole thing under control and tell mom, look, no, you can't, don't do that just yet.
Yeah.
Do it.
That's perfect.
So it worked out, and thankfully the girl wasn't seriously injured. It was just minor injuries, and then, of course, then it was taking care of the bus driver.
Well, absolutely. And one of my mentors is Bruce Perry, and he runs the Child Trauma Academy. And what he always talks about is that your amygdala gets hijacked when you're in a fight, flight, or freeze response. And so I always say that as parents, if your child's amygdala is hijacked, is it a really good idea for your amygdala to be hijacked? No. And so in your situation, absolutely. Mom's amygdala was hijacked, bus driver amygdala hijacked, daughter's amygdala hijacked. Thank goodness your amygdala was not hijacked.
I know. I don't know how I stayed so calm, but my whole focus was about the girl. She just,
absolutely.
The driver can wait. The mom can wait.
Yep.
This girl needed strength. She needed support. She needed to calm down. And I was able to get her calm enough, not only to find out where it was that where she's feeling pain, but I was also able to get the situation down to a point where everyone could do their job and relay the information I got to the paramedics, to the fire crew that came by, and the police and whatnot. I was able to at least get all that information translated so they could treat her. Because I didn't know if she was seriously hurt. I mean, it was a bus, and the bus was moving it. And I still remember hearing that bang. And so to get her, the focus was to get the daughter looked after. So if that meant calming mom down, calming the bus driver down, removing all these people that had stopped to see what was going on, get them out of the way, then I did that.
Right.
It had to be done for the sake of the child.
Right. Well, and that's exactly what overcoming your own emotions is about. Because we can be in crisis all day long. And anyone who's raised a toddler knows you're in crisis all day long.
Yes.
And so, for me, when I work with families and parents, what we talk a lot about is, what are your blueprints? And blueprints are those things that are deep, deep down inside of you that you were raised with. Children are to be seen and not heard. Don't speak back. Never disrespect your elders. When I say no, I mean no. It's because I said so and I'm the mom. Those kind of things are all your blueprints. And as much as we don't want those to flare up when we become parents, they flare up.
Absolutely.
And so if we're not aware of them, then it's a lot more difficult to parent differently than how we were parented. So, at our house, we deal with a lot of emotion, and it can be very dramatic and very emotional sometimes. We have a daughter and a son. They're full of drama. But that doesn't mean that my husband and I have to be a part of that drama. We don't have to be a part of that. And the other thing I like to teach parents to do with their kids is that some emotions need a physical outlet. Well, all emotions need a physical outlet, but some need it more than others. So anger has to have a physical outlet. And if we don't teach a physical outlet of some sort, they will find a physical outlet. That's why kids hit and bite and kick. So, like things that we teach little people, jumping. Jumping can't really hurt anybody. But if you jump when you're mad, you feel good.
Yes.
You see what I mean? And it's letting that anger out. Hitting your pillow. Exercise. So important. I'm amazed at how many parents I talk to and I say, do your kids exercise? Well, kind of. And I'm like, if you teach them to go for a jog, even if they're 3 and 4 and they just run around the house one time, that's blowing off steam, and that is something that can transition later in life to something that can absolutely be really healthy for them in dealing with their emotions. So I think feel the feelings, and then role model. How many kids that have walked through my door who tell me to F off when they're angry, and then their parents tell me to F off when they're angry. So that's not really dealing with things appropriately. So I would say, kids are going to observe what they see. It's just like teaching them to walk. They're watching everyone walk the same way. So if the people in their life are not dealing with feelings, sadness is a huge one. We grow up in a culture where we teach little boys it's not okay to cry.
Yes.
And yet that's really one of the most healthy things you can do is cry. And so I always say, if you feel like crying, then cry. And I also tell kids, save your tears for when you're really sad. instead of when you just don't get your own way, or, those kind of things. We talk about when is it important to do the tears. So it's really about role modeling, letting your kids feel the feelings when they're feeling them. Probably the most complicated thing is grief. I've worked with families. I had a parent who brought their kiddo in, and the dad had committed suicide in front of his kids and his wife. There are no words to put to that situation. Grief is not a strong enough word. Sadness, depression, those aren't words that really match that. So the kid's going to need to have some physical ways to deal with those emotions. He's going to need to snuggle and cry on somebody's shoulder, and no matter what age.
Absolutely.
So I hope those are answering some of your questions, Sharon.
Oh, absolutely. Is there any other techniques that we can use, say, like as parents, as adults, or even as adults ourselves now, that can healthy express our emotions? Like, for example, one thing that I do, if I get angry, and especially if I'm angry at someone, and I immediately grab a piece of paper and I write everything down, except I don't write the words. I write the first letter of every word down. That way, if someone finds it, they won't know what it is. They just see a bunch of random letters on the paper. But it's also a way for me to express myself, like, in a private manner, but to me, that's healthy.
Absolutely. And I just believe that you got to get it out, however that is, whether it's talking, writing. I have friends who, I think actually men do a really good job of having hobbies. And women don't do as great of a job as that. And I wish we kind of did a better job at that. But I think having that hobby is a good release. For example, my husband loves working on trucks. So I know if he's had a bad day, it's good for him to just go work on his trucks, do whatever he needs to do. Like, that's better for the whole entire family to do that. And it gives him an outlet. That's his way of dealing with life. I have a really good friend who mountain bikes. I have another good friend who reads books. When she's in a funk, she just reads. And what she does is process all that emotion in that time. And I'm a therapist, so I believe in therapy. And I also believe that I never take my clients anywhere I'm not willing to go. And so everything I've recommended to my clients, I've done myself. I've been in the chair on the other side, meeting the therapist, pouring out my heart and saying, yeah, this is the stuff I'm dealing with. And there's something about that when you find a really good connection with a therapist that is just handy, and you can go places you didn't think you would be able to go, and they're not involved in the crisis, and they're trained crisis responders. And so sometimes that's just nice. And I believe in it. I believe it's good to kind of have an appointment and talk about yourself for an hour to 2 hours. And then therapists have some tools in their toolbox. And one of the tools that I use with a lot of my clients, especially what I say to people, if they're working on old blueprint stuff or old memory stuff and they're adults, I say, look back on your life and think of the memories that really stand up, and rate them from 0 to 10, with 0 being no emotion about it, 10 being as much emotion as you could ever imagine. And I use the word emotion because we don't know necessarily if it's anger, sadness, happiness. It's an emotion. We're not sure what it's called yet. But if it's a 5 or higher, it's worth going in to see somebody and getting some extra support outside of your family so that you can work through those emotions you're carrying with you. Because whether we like it or not, those emotions imprint in our brain and we hold on to them as a memory. And so, I have a lot of people ask me, how come I get so mad when my kids leave their clothes all over? I tell them to go clean up their room. And I've told them 600 times and they don't want to do it. And by the time I get to 601, I'm ready to kill them. And that's kind of really, but that's what happens. That's pretty strong emotion, killing your kid for not cleaning their room. Well, that says to me that there's a lot of memories that are 5 or higher that we don't want to carry into our other relationships. Mm. So what I do with that in therapy is I use EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Some people use hypnotism. Some people use cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of different techniques, but in essence what we're doing is we're getting that memory out. We're letting people feel the feeling they have when they have that memory, and then leaving it behind. Like, digest that emotion and move forward. Clear your brain out, because your brain can only hold so much emotion.
Yes.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
That was a long answer, Sharon.
No, that's great. One of the things, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, that I do, and one of the things that I have done for actually many years, and I recommend it to people, is a process called EFT or tapping. And
Yes.
And it's when I do my programs about removing blocks, especially for adults, it's one of the things I recommend people do or learn is EFT. And I know it's really helped me. I actually work with a partner, and the two of us, once a week, we sit down and we say, okay, what do we want to work on tonight? And I'll tap for him, he'll tap for me, and even though we're doing this by video cam and he's in a different country, we still tap even if it's not my issue, because there's always benefits. And I know that as well they've been using this to work with war veterans to help with post-traumatic stress. And it's one thing that I've always recommended. And then another thing that is not as well known as EFT is the healing codes, and that really helps with getting rid of the emotions as well. But definitely, I go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, EMDR has a lot of tapping in it. You can use tapping to do EMDR. And I actually work with parents to tap with their kids and kind of teach them when they're having an emotion to use tapping, and that's a positive touch kind of thing. My daughter broke her collarbone. She's broken her collarbone twice, actually. It's a big, long, drawn-out story, full of drama. But anyway, I was trying to explain kind of how this whole process works with tapping, EMDR, kind of how your body holds memory. And we did some EMDR with my daughter, and she was 4 at the time. And she went right back to when she broke her collarbone the second time. She had emotion about it. She was angry because she didn't get to finish dinner. I didn't even realize that was in there, And then she felt that emotion, and then she moved forward. And those are the kind of things that what we forget is that even if we talk about it, we might still be holding it in our body. And it's important to have some sort of release from that also. So, those are great. Massage. I think massage is huge. And I know you do Reiki, correct?
Reiki, yes.
Reiki. Yeah. Reiki. I can never say it right. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm a Reiki teacher. And I've been doing it for about 12 years. It's been an amazing process. It's helped me reduce my need for asthma puffers and reduced other physical things that I've had going on, and it just really keeps me well balanced. If I don't practice, I practice Reiki on a daily basis, so if I don't practice it, I find that I get off key, and so this really helps me. Now, I want to actually talk about that you have a website and that people can go to, and you have a blog on there, and you've got an online encouragement group. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my website is bewhatsright.com, and it's kind of a twofold message. First of all, be what's right in a world that focuses so much on what's wrong. As a therapist, people always bring people into my life because something is wrong with them. And while it's a blessing that they're in my life, I always try to shift it to focus on we're not all going to be perfect, and we need to build on strengths and learn our weaknesses and get through that. And then the other piece of that is RIGHT stands for role model with integrity, genuineness, honesty, and trust. It doesn't mean be perfect, because none of us are. But it means that when we make a mistake, or we screw up, that we own it and we say, yeah, I blew it. This just didn't work out right. I was having a rough day. I'm going to try again later. And so my website, just remodeled, hopefully will be full of all sorts of information soon, but is really to help parents focus on, just little strategies to be the crisis responder. And if you go to bewhatsright.com, there's an initial video, and then you can sign up for a free ebook, and then you'll get a video series. And then also have a blog where I post a lot of this information. I really focus on brain development and child development. There's so much information about the brain, 90% of the brain is organized by age 5. Yet 90% of our interventions for children are after the age of 5. So if we would intervene sooner and parents had information about child development sooner, we would see way healthier relationships. So focus on a lot of that. And then I'm starting and getting up and running an online encouragement group. And I call it that because we all need support, but people kind of resist that. They don't want it to be support. And I want it to be encouraging. I want people to be able to come online and say, gosh, I really did want to kill my kid for not cleaning their room today. Because we do. I know this stuff inside and out. I preach it every day to parents, but I have moments when my kids are driving me crazy, And so an encouragement group is really about to say, hey, this is what's going on with me, and other parents to say, yeah, I've been there. This is what we can do. I monitor it. So then I would weigh in, because sometimes there are things kids do and we don't necessarily understand why they do them. So it's nice to kind of have that feedback. So I'd love people to come visit it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I encourage you all to do so too. I know we met a few months ago and we've had some great conversations back and forth. But I really encourage everyone, check out Stacy's website. I think it will benefit you, especially for parents. Now, do you have any final tips for parents that will help them deal with children who are acting out, who are emotional, and they don't know how to handle that? Is there some guidelines?
Absolutely. As simple as this is, and people used to tell me this all the time, and I would blow it off until I understood why it was important. I think breathing is hugely important. And I used to say, yeah, whatever. But what I learned is that your amygdala needs oxygen. So when we breathe, we actually are cooling our brain down so that it will function the way it needs to function. So when we're starting to get real agitated, if we can breathe and take some deep breaths, and then we can teach our kids to do that, that makes a huge difference. And you can do that with, if you start little, then they learn as they get older. And what we did at our house is when I take a deep breath, our kids would put our hand on our heart, and then we would put our hands on their heart, and they could breathe and match our breathing, even when they were really, really mad. But then as they get older, they kind of do that on their own, and you can teach them to do that on their own. So that's my parting tip, Sharon, for all your listeners. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Don't forget to breathe.
Yes, definitely.
And let me add, I have a no-kill policy. You may want to get to a place where you want to kill them, and they may want to get to a place where they want to kill you. Nobody can kill each other, and nobody can kill themselves, because that's just not an option. So breathing and no killing. Those are my two big, rules.
Yes. Now, again, if you want to contact us, you can do so at www.bewhatsright.com. And again, I'm Sharon Lorainne Boon, founder and creator of Passage to Yourself, and I want to thank you all for joining us for our talk today. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy, for joining us.